Hello, all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. My name's Brad Harris, and each week, along with my wonderful co hosts, we review films either current or classic on this show, all with a lovable bear twist. We are on episode 441 of MBP Crazy, so close to 450. We're coming up on like our 25-year anniversary or something in a few months. We're a little long in the tooth, but you know what? That's okay because it means we've been around a while. We've seen a few things. We know a
We've
little
seen a
bit.
few things, yeah.
We've seen things.
We've seen lots of things, including the film we're going to be talking about this week on the show, that being The Black Phone, the new horror flick starring Ethan Hawke. Horror movies don't get enough love, we feel, and so it's our pleasure, it's our privilege to review this film this week, whether for good or bad. We'll see what we thought about it. But horror is getting some highlighting. But listen, there's a couple guys I can't do this without. You've already heard from them, but let me formally introduce them to you. Jim Pugliafico is with us here in the virtual studio. Hi, sweetheart.
I'm here. Hi. Thanks for that wonderful introduction. I am really looking forward to talking about this movie with you guys. Doesn't seem to be, with everything else going on in the world and maybe other bigger movies out at the moment, this one isn't really getting much buzz. But yeah, we'll make our own buzz. Let's do it.
All right. Buzz. I'm down for it for sure. But we're going to need the help of one additional gentleman to make that happen. William Lindis is here with us on the show as well. Hey, Will.
Hey, yeah, Brad, Jim, everyone that's watching or listening later on digital tape delay. I'm excited to talk about this one. This one's been picking up a little bit of steam since it's kind of it played a few festivals and the word from those has been really high. So I've been really excited to see this one. And now that we have, I'm really excited to talk about it. So yeah, I'm ready to dive in.
Rock on. Well, then, with that said, why don't we just do it? Let's jump into our review for this week. I know Will's ready. Jim, are you ready?
I'm totally ready.
All right. Well, then we're going to go ahead and begin our discussion of The Black Phone here in just a few moments. But for those who may be new to the show, or maybe it's been a hot minute since you've listened, just a reminder, the way that we like to do things is we'll talk about a movie spoiler-free for 10 or 15 minutes before we open up the can of spoilers and dive deep into discussion around plot points and other things you could be spoiled on. Not to worry, though, we will give you plenty of warning, and by plenty of warning, I mean me rambling ad nauseum until we think you've had a chance to jump off the show or hit pause. But if you don't really know a lot about The Black Phone, you haven't seen it, maybe you're on the fence, feel free to hang out with us. Stick around. We'll give you our initial spoiler-free thoughts before we make that jump. All of that said, here we go. Our discussion of The Black Phone. Ring, 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 ring.
Hello? Hello? Who is it?
I don't know anymore.
Hold on. Hold on. I'm getting another call.
No, listen to me, goddammit.
Oh, wait, hold on. Wait, hold on. I'm on the phone with Ghost Brad, I think. Who is this? Is this Ghost Jim? Oh my God, I'm so confused.
Oh, this is going to be a fun conversation already. I'm so jazzed to talk about this film with you guys. We've been holding in discussion for several days now since we've seen the film. We don't really know a lot about what each other thought of The Black Phone, so I guess we're about to find out right now. Mm-hmm. Will, if you don't mind, I know you were kind of the genre movie / horror aficionado of our little triumvirate. Do us a favor and set this film up and give us your initial thoughts. What did you think?
Absolutely. So The Black Phone, this one has been the reason I mentioned in the kind of the setup that this one's did the festival circuit, and I've been waiting for this one. And part of that's because this was originally supposed to be a January or February release after it did its kind of fall of last year run, and then it got pushed to this summer, and so as a result, it's like, damn it, I've got to wait an extra few months. I'm glad they did push it. Box office wise, this movie is doing very well right now, especially for a horror film. Sort of going toe to toe with Jurassic World and Top Gun and Elvis, which are out right now. Which, granted, some of those are not in their first run, but still, it's in the conversation. This is a movie. The premise of it is you've got this 13-year-old boy who is the latest victim of this child abductor slash killer played by Ethan Hawke. This grabber, as he's called, puts these kids in the basement before eventually killing them. And this 13-year-old boy, while sort of figuring out what to do, how to escape all of that, notices a black phone, and this is the title of it, on the wall, the ring, even though it's been disconnected. And he's soon about to get a little bit of help from the things on the other side of that line. A couple things to know about this. First of all, this is based off of a short story by Joe Hill, the son of Stephen King. It's a short story in the grand scheme of things. And so writer Robert Cargill, he's done a few things, but included the first Doctor Strange movie, and Sinister, which he wrote along with Scott Derrickson, who is the director of those same films. The two of them are sort of like a writer-director pair. They really work to flesh out that short story into a longer story that can sustain like a feature length. I really liked it. I think this is a really, really solid genre film with some really effective moments. I think that from an atmosphere perspective, especially once the more supernatural elements start kicking in, I think they're presented in a way that is compelling, that is scary, but also has sort of a different energy to it. Like, this is not a just straight up nonstop scary movie. There's something gritty and hopeful about it in a weird way. I don't know how better to describe that for a child that's trying to escape from a child abductor. But it's the type of movie I sometimes think about this when someone says to me, like, I don't like horror movies. A lot of times that comes from they don't necessarily like the gore or like the body horror or those types of elements. And as far as horror movies go, this one is fairly light in those elements and is more built around tension and stakes. I think that Ethan Hawke is really good in this. I mean, that's a little bit of a softball, right? Ethan Hawke is just very, very, very good in almost everything he does here. And I think he gets to play a role that is in some ways a little one note, but he has to kind of bounce between a couple of different interpretations of that note, depending on what he's trying to portray to his victims. And I think that he does a fantastic job with that. I think the lead kid is quite good in this. Some of the other child actors, there are a couple of line deliveries that I didn't 100% love, but it's a movie that's predominantly kids. And so I can't hold that too much about it. Atmosphere, tone, setting, the way flashbacks and side stories are kind of told through all of that is incredibly effective. As far as horror movies go, I think this one's the goods, and probably good for a wider audience than a lot of the horror movies that might come out. And again, when I say wider audience, I'm not talking about kids, but just like a wider, like adult audience. I think more people would get into this than the average horror movie. So yeah, it's a strong recommend for me.
All right, awesome. Well, Will, you mentioned that this movie is kind of light on body horror and gore as horror films go. Sean Bagley in the chat, hey Sean, says this is a refreshing change from a lot of the horror movies that have maybe come out over the last few years. This one is maybe a little lighter on some of those elements. Would you say that's true, Will? Because I know you've seen a lot.
Yeah, I think that there's really been two diverging branches in horror lately, and one is the Blumhouse style formula, which is maybe goes too far the other direction of just sort of like stripping all of those elements out so it can have like a nice clean PG-13 and get more people in the crowd, or like, yeah, let's fuck them up, let's go hardcore and really like show them some stuff to shock them. This one feels like it toes the middle of those things. It implies the violence without actually showing it or even showing the results of it in a weird way. That there's maybe a little bit of nothing, you've seen worse in a random action movie, I'll be honest. But at the same time, it feels a little bit less, I don't know. I like Blumhouse movies to a degree, but I think some of them fall into a bit of a rut that this one avoids. So yeah, when you say it's a refreshing change, I 100% agree with that, Sean. This was a very refreshing film to watch.
All right, awesome. Well, Will, thanks so much for weighing in. Let's head on over to Jim. Jim, did you think like Will that this was a pretty good movie, strong recommend, or did it maybe fall short for you?
Oh boy. Before I get to that punchline, I just want to say that like I went into this movie not really knowing what to expect, because I did see some word come out, tweets come out during the festival circuit. Did this play, Will, at Fantastic Fest or
This did Fantastic Fest, and then I think it
but
might
you
have
didn't
done
catch it
TIFF
then,
as well.
right?
I did not catch it at Fantastic Fest. I only did a little bit of Fantastic Fest because I was still like kind of picking and choosing which crowds I was in
Yeah.
at the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so I would see stuff and people were saying that it was, a good horror movie and, a good movie. We'll get into what genre it actually falls into, because I think it's maybe arguable, but like this movie again, like this movie really pleasantly surprised me. I love this movie by the end. Like there's a lot of it that just hit all the right elements for me. It's certainly well made. I just liked a lot of the stuff they did in terms of like the art and set direction was great. This movie is a film that takes place, is set back in the 70s, I believe, and it made you feel like this was a film that could have been made around the time that the classic horror movie Halloween, for instance, could have been made. Right? It had that kind of feel to it. There was some just the certain look of the film. I thought Ethan Hawke is great. I'm a huge Ethan Hawke fan, and I was a little worried about him playing this kind of role. He's behind a mask. He's a ooga booga, child abductor. I was just kind of worried about putting an actor of his caliber kind of in that role, but it worked for me. I think it was great. Kind of a little bit of him pushing boundaries too, in terms of his acting cred. I loved it, and like I said, I thought all the kids were great here. Like even some of the secondary characters, victims, if you will, I thought really did a good job. We'll talk more about it, in a little bit later in sports. But yeah, I loved everything about this, and I can't recommend it enough. I think it's worth seeing. I just wish it was getting more attention. I don't know if it's picking up steam or not, but I'll just say that one of the things I liked about it, it subverted expectations in kind of the opposite way. This movie did not try to outsmart its audience, right? It did not try to put, I'll just say it wasn't extremely twisty or it's pretty straightforward, but effective. And to me, as Sean said, that was refreshing in itself. I loved it. It's great.
All right. Well, Jim, thank you so much for letting us know what you thought about it. Two pretty solid recommends for this movie so far. I hate to be the one that brings that train crashing down, but I think where you guys found a lot to enjoy, the situation was absolutely the same for me. So the train's going to keep going.
I wasn't sure what you were doing, Brad. I know you sometimes do the zig into the zag.
He does.
This time I'm like, nah, he's going to play it straight, isn't he? So no, that was a refreshing change as well.
It is an MBP hat trick for the Black Phone. This was a really, really fantastic film. Going into this one, I was a little hesitant, I think. Jim, sort of similar to you about Ethan Hawke in this role. We've seen Ethan in many things. He's a very talented actor. Most recently, I saw him in Moon Knight, and he kind of left a bad taste in my mouth from Moon Knight. And I think that's where some of my hesitancy in coming to this movie was, because I was just like, oh God, more Ethan Hawke, really? But I was like, he's been in so many other things and been great. Let's give it a chance. And holy hell, did he knock it out of the park in this movie. He was wearing a mask for most of the movie. You've seen different versions of the mask in the trailer and its various like states of like part being on and then off. And, he's really fucking creepy in that mask. And just the way he moves his head while he's all masked up and like things he does with his hands, he actually kind of reminded me of the monster from Pan's Labyrinth, the one that Doug Jones plays with like the eyes and the hands.
A fawn.
Well, not the fawn. I'm talking about the one that like sees through the eyes and the hands.
Okay. Yeah.
The one that Saru from Star Trek Discovery
guy.
plays. Yeah. Just in the way that he kind of moved and like creepily just, I don't know, like made his way around a room. I mean, he really owned the space. He wasn't outright like yelling or screaming all the time, like another, movie might have its killer do. A lot of his creep factor just came from like his presence. And I really appreciated that. I agree with you that the kid actors, I think, did a pretty good job in this. I think that the girl who played the sister is probably my favorite child actor performance in the last year or so. I really liked her in this movie. I thought she did really great. I will say,
kind of gonna call her Dream Girl.
There you go. I will say that this movie did leave me with a few questions about the supernatural elements, and maybe we can talk through some of those when we get into spoilers. But by and large, I appreciated how this movie, like you said, Jim, didn't go out of its way to try and outsmart the audience or make it too twisty or too topsy-turvy, but it still did things in a way that I found highly satisfying and reached an ending that I appreciated and I was happy to see. So good stuff in this film. This is very much a recommend from me.
Yeah, I mean, this we talked a little bit about genre, right? We've talked about this being a horror film. You could certainly say it's a thriller, maybe a suspense movie. It's got all of those elements. A lot of people might discount it as a horror movie because, as we said, the body horror or the violent, there isn't a lot of like. It's certainly not a slasher horror movie, but it does have some elements of maybe supernatural or I can't mystical. I can't quite put my finger on it, and there are some questions that I hope we get into in spoilers. But it's funny for me, like it didn't appear to be overused. I kind of somehow this movie worked its magic on me and made me accept its premise kind of right away. And that's to me is a mark of a good movie.
Well, that's the world building, right? Like I think that it's really easy to sort of spread around the accolades on this because, I've read the story that it's based off of, and a lot of it's there in that source material, right? But it's also, like I said, a very short story in the grand scheme of things. And what Roderick Cargill and Scott Derrickson do here to really flesh out those details to make the other victims have more both personality and agency beyond kind of what existed within the story, giving them a little bit more to do in terms of the story, and giving the main character a little bit more time to sort of stew in the horror of what's going on. I think all of that really works to effectively expand the story with sort of like a all killer, no filler type perspective, right? Like this was not a brutally long movie. I mean, it comes in under 2 hours. It's like an hour 43. Hell yeah, give me that all day.
It's very breezy. Yeah.
and it feels breezy. Jim, to go back to one of your previous points, you weren't sure how this one was doing. This one, I know I mentioned up front, like it was kind of going toe to toe, kind of the box office. It's made back its money and then some already with one weekend in. Like this was an $18 million film that's already made like 23 million domestic and another like 10 million international. So it's almost doubled its money. Or it's narrowing in on doubling its money, and that's after one weekend alone. Enough so that I was looking on Twitter and just sort of like looking into I followed the writer on Twitter, and he's like, "Hey, these are good numbers. These are good horror numbers, right? You know, the fact that like they beat Lightyear this week, and yeah, Lightyear's on week 2." But they still beat Lightyear this week, and it's a very different audience. You know, a lot of these kids' movies can sometimes hold on for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, and this one stuck at. So this is a really good sign. You don't see horror movies that do this well this often, unless it's like, I imagine the Jordan Peele one that's coming out later this summer is going to do fairly well because it's got more of that prestige audience attention. But this is good. This is going to open up more doors for Derrickson and Cargill, who recently had part of they were originally tapped for the second Doctor Strange movie, and something happened with Marvel and they went a different direction and did not do.
Yeah,
they only did the first one, not the second one. So this was a net positive. I'm glad that this is kind of this is what they made instead, because this was really fucking good.
It's interesting that they come from a huge blockbuster Marvel movie and the first Doctor Strange, right? And then, they're into making Blumhouse films who are they're known for, spend a little and make a lot. It's just astounding kind of the range, I guess, you can have in these creative people. I'd love to see that they aren't locked into just big budget movies now.
Absolutely. And these are also people who kind of like, I like directors who sort of work with the same actors, in that like they sort of build up a stable of people who they like working with. They had Sinister was the movie that put both of them on the map like 10 years ago. And Ethan Hawke was the lead in that. And then when Sinister 2 came out, I think that was James Ransone who was the lead, who was also in this. He played the brother in this one, who doesn't have a big part in this one, but the brother at the let's say at the corkboard, we'll say that. So it's one. They're this filmmaking duo that like they must be good to work with as well, to have people keep coming back and working with them, right?
Yeah.
And so that also gives me the warm fuzzies when I celebrate this film.
Did either of you guys get nostalgic about rotary phones in this movie?
I got nostalgic about a lot more than rotary phones in this movie. I loved, yes, the rotary phone, but also kids riding bikes. Like, we don't see a lot of that anymore. I mean, the soundtrack, the few songs that were dropped into this movie, needle drops or whatever, I thought were fantastic, well placed. Little League Baseball at the very beginning of the movie, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember those times. And it's, I don't know, there's just something about this film. I don't think it tries to throw in the nostalgia too much in your face, but it is there, and it definitely fits that 70s aesthetic that I think is so cool. I mean, we've had Licorice Pizza was another one, right? That kind of did the same thing. We've got the show Stranger Things, which is 80s, I guess, whatever. This one, and this film has flavors of some of those properties too, right? You could watch this film and be reminded of Stranger Things, certainly, right? You could be reminded of other things like It, Stephen King's It, right? Maybe with the child abduction kind of angle, but I did feel that nostalgia, and I just for me, that was part of the whole movie for me.
My biggest nostalgic moment was right there at the beginning when they're playing the ball game, because they put in what I played a lot of Little League Baseball. Of all that, I sucked ass at Little League football. I couldn't make baskets at Little League basketball, but I was a really good like first baseman at Little League baseball. So I played many years of that. And the thing I remember most, more than anything of that time, is at the end of the game, just the dead voices on the kids as they're going, good game, good game, good game, good game, good game, good game, walking past and giving everyone the little high fives, and then you go get orange slices and Capri Suns or whatever. But that was my nostalgic moment because at the end of that Little League moment, then they're going, good game, and it's there for a story beat purpose that's important, but it also, it did hit me in nostalgic feels, and again, not like manipulatively so. This movie wasn't setting out to be like a nostalgia bait. This is just a movie that understood its time and told a story that was sincere to its time.
Yeah, it incidentally has member berries as opposed to being all member berries. There's a big difference there. So, well, listen, we've got a lot to talk about in spoilers, I think. So, Jim and Will, if you are ready, I will make that jump. And I'll remember to leave space for you this time, Jim, for the editing. I see you typing. I asked Jim to give me a reminder at the beginning of the show, so I didn't forget. You're getting to see how the sausage is made. Jim may even edit this out. I don't know. But don't worry, babe.
Thanks for giving me more work to do.
Or leave it in. Leave it in. Let people see, how things are done. Anyway, all right, here we go. Spoilers for The Black Phone are officially fair game in about 20 seconds. So if you haven't seen The Black Phone yet, you don't want to have your experience influenced or, completely destroyed by hearing all about the plot of this film. This is your chance. If you're listening live, go ahead, come back in 23 minutes and 10 seconds for our last round of Pride plugs. You don't want to miss those. Or if you're listening through the magic of digital tape delay on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, however you access your podcast content, use the time index in the show notes. Go ahead and skip on ahead to those Pride plugs. Again, you don't want to miss them. All of that said, here we go. Spoilers for The Black Phone. All right, where do you guys want to start with this one?
You said you had some questions about how. Yeah. So this movie has some metaphysical or super whatever aspects to it, supernatural. Obviously, there are. So another thing I liked about this movie, as it went along, there was a mystery of what was happening to the kids. Right? It was never. I don't think the movie ever revealed that of course, no bodies were found, right? No bodies were ever found. So it wasn't really clear. I don't think, right?
Well, they found the bodies at the end.
No, I mean, like as the movie was playing out.
I see. Okay.
As during the movie, there were no, and these kids had been disappearing for some time. Yeah. But it wasn't super clear whether maybe the kids were being kept alive somewhere. You know what I mean? Or if they were dead until partway through the movie when, our main character, and I forget his name. Was it Dylan? What was his name? Finn, started seeing apparitions or ghosts. And even then, you don't know whether he was imagining that or that was like really happening to him. So I thought just that was a really cool thing. To me anyway, like there was no way I was figuring it out. He never, the killer, I think only towards the end said he might kill him. And it wasn't clear why Ethan Hawke's character was kidnapping and just kidnapping and killing kids. He didn't appear to be like torturing them or touching them inappropriately or anything like that, at least with our character. So it's like in your mind you're like, okay, what is happening here? Like why is he doing this? Like, what is he getting out of it?
He did torture the kids. Remember the game Naughty Boy? He would sit upstairs and leave the door unlocked, and he'd have his belt. And then when the kid would come up, he'd beat the hell out of him and then kill them. So, I mean, he was getting his rocks off with some violence there, I think.
We just didn't see it, yeah.
Right, right.
Yeah,
But it
okay.
was interesting that he couldn't bring himself or wouldn't bring himself to be violent until the boy became naughty by trying to escape, which is interesting. My one of my questions was, Jim, kind of that you were alluding to, I was asking about earlier. So we know that the mother had visions. We know that the daughter has these dreams. Is the whole thing that happens with the voices on the black phone like a latent psychic ability thing that Finney has? Is that how he's able to talk to them? Because the phone is physically ringing. I mean, the other dude can hear it.
Yeah.
So that's my question.
So I think the best way to really answer this is to kind of think back to the writer of this and kind of like what his roots are, right? This is Joe Hill. This is Joe Hillstrom King. This is the son of Stephen King. And with Stephen King and Joe Hill's writings, they tend to have this, both of them have a similarity in the way that they view psychic powers, which go across a lot of their works, which is that, everyone maybe has the potential to this thing, but there's some people that are super in tune with this, right? And so I think that's sort of what we got here, without them directly saying this as much. We've got this mother, this daughter, this son, who for whatever reason are just better at picking up on these things. So the phone would ring, other people could hear it, but they couldn't really hear the connection that was happening on the other side because they just weren't that connected to it, right? I would imagine that if they had come downstairs, there was another thing where like the ghosts did something very physical, which is when they pointed the bottle.
Spin the bottle.
Yeah. I would imagine if he was downstairs, he would have seen that because that's like a physical thing. But I don't think like the actual connection and the hearing and all of that. My hunch is that probably just came from the kid's psychic powers.
But did the bottle spin in real life? Would Ethan Hawke have seen it, or was that just something that Finney was seeing in his head?
The bottles kind of rattled and moved around and pointed in certain directions. Yeah.
Right. So I
wasn't clear.
Yeah, I was just trying to kind of figure that out. Because if that's the case, then Finney only survived because he's got the shining.
That's accurate. I think that's accurate. I think that the other kids, I would not be surprised if Robin was the kid that was kidnapped prior to him, right? I would not be surprised if the phone rang for Robin and he answered it and heard nothing, and then got his chance to escape, went upstairs, and then bad stuff happened, right?
Yeah.
So I would imagine that's 100% the right. I think that it was only because he had this special ability to connect over. He might not be the only one. I mean, obviously his sister, there's probably other kids who are a little more in tune with that sort of thing. But it was fortunate, ? That it was him. It's never fortunate in this situation, but you know what I mean.
So did the grabber have the shining as well? Because did he know about the phone? He didn't know about the phone, right? Did he know that the phone rang?
He heard it ring once, but he chalked it up. He said he's answered it before, and there was never anything there, and he always just chalked it up to static electricity in the house. Yeah.
Gotcha.
And that's, if you think about it too, like even maybe taking the Stephen King thing out of it and just sort of take like other works of fiction into play. Like there's this sort of prevailing wisdom that kids are sometimes able to, because of the way that they tap their imagination, like pick up on things that maybe adults can't, because we're way quicker to sort of like rationalize things or to compartmentalize things, to say, well, it must have been static electricity, therefore I'm not going to open myself up to the fact that maybe a ghost was trying to talk to me. So yeah, I mean, he heard it ring, but he just never heard anything on the other side. So I don't think that there was any shining or whatever we want to call it with him.
What do we make of the brother? At one part of the movie, it shows presumably Ethan Hawke with the mask on, sitting in the chair at the top of the stairs, and I could swear that was a different body type than Ethan Hawke. I don't know if you like. It seemed much more imposing and muscular. So to me, they're like, okay, they substituted somebody in that role to make them look a little bit more menacing. But then I'm thinking, well, maybe it was the brother. Maybe the brother. And that was the whole thing through the movie too. Like maybe the brother's in on it. Maybe he was in on it, and we found out later he wasn't. But this is my thought process through the movie.
If I may, about the Ethan Hawke being buff. If you remember before this, he did Moon Knight, but you remember what else he did right before this, right?
What?
The Northman.
Oh yeah.
So I would imagine, I don't know exactly when these were shot in relationship to one another, but more than likely he was either buffing up to shoot the Northman, or he was still coming off of buffing up for that one.
That's a good point. Yeah. Good point.
But the brother was interesting, right? Because this was that was an extra wrinkle to this movie. Is normally we think of these killers in these movies or as these sort of lone wolves who are like live in isolation and they're the only ones doing things. And here we've got this guy who has a brother who doesn't even know that it's happening under the same roof. And granted, we find out that the story about the brother is like, it's not like he's always living here. It sounded like he was like crashing there while he was visiting and while, in between jobs, and was doing that, like became hyper focused on trying to solve the murder that I guess his brother was doing. I thought that was neat because it added an extra level of, for me, in some ways, both there's an unrealistic element, like how did this motherfucker not know? But at the same time, there's also a bit of a realistic element. Like this kid had longer to figure out how to escape than probably the other kids did. But it seemed like a lot of that was because there were some complications with the brother there, right? And so he was having to sort of be cautious about what and when he was doing.
Yeah, it sounded to me like, and Ethan Hawke is definitely an what's the word for it, when he's an unreliable narrator, right? When it comes to his brother, because at the end he's like, oh, I think what he said was like, oh, he's crazy.
He's an idiot.
He's an idiot, and and maybe that was the case. Maybe Ethan Hawke was the quote unquote intelligent one, even though he was homicidally, sociopathic. Maybe he was taking care of the brother, and the brother had these ideas that he was like some kind of criminal forensic expert or something, but he was just living in the house, and Ethan Hawke was just just kind of maybe just taking care of him. I don't know. They didn't really explore that relationship all that much, but just enough to like make you ask questions about it, which I thought was kind of cool.
Question for the two of you. How did you feel about the scenes where, so we sort of had two different ways that the conversations with the dead kids happened. One, Finney would be on the phone and we would hear the voice, but every so often we would cut over and we would see a vision of that same kid in the same room having the conversation, although not facing face to face, usually kind of like facing
like in
different
a corner
walls or something
or
like that. Like, was that visual effective for you?
Yeah, I thought it was super effective because the voice, the character, you heard the disembodied voice coming through the phone, right? Just like kind of like that thin voice that you would hear coming through a phone receiver. And then all of a sudden the camera sweeps a little bit and you see the character talking physically, appearing to be there in the room talking, but you still heard the voice as though it was coming through the phone. I thought that was super effective. I also want to talk about like the jump scares in this movie. There were only maybe three, maybe four, not that many. Right. And the movie didn't try to overwhelm the audience like with a ton of jump scares, and they didn't have a lot of like swelling music and cutting to silence leading to them. All of them were effective. I jumped in my seat at least twice to those jump scares. One of them was the girl riding the bike down the street, and all of a sudden, boom, the kids are in front of her. I thought that was super effective. I jumped at that one. And then I think it was one of the first one where the kid appears in the room, just the way the camera moved, just startled the shit out of me.
But, I I pretended not to be jump scared, but I totally was.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, I'm like, I jumped at one point in the movie, and I'm like, I looked at you, and I'm like, how could you not have not jumped in that scene?
Brad, did you do one of these things like?
Yep.
Yeah,
Why
I
does
was
it
just
scratch
reaching
my
for my
neck? No,
Coke.
what? Oh,
I'm just giving random sex arm. That's what I'm doing.
Wow.
Yeah. No, definitely really effective jump scares, especially the one that I liked most was when Finney is like on the phone talking to one of the kids, and the camera just happens to pan to the right, and we see one of the dead kids like talking and the mouth moving with the tinny voice, and then the camera moves back and then back again, and the kid
Really,
is gone.
really creepy, right?
Really creepy because it made me question if I saw what I thought I saw, because it was there and then it was gone, and then it was like, oh yeah, I totally saw, you know, a vision, you know. But I wasn't sure if Finney was able to see them, and I don't think he did until the third jump scare where the girl is like floating in the air. That was like the only real element of body horror in this movie, I think, was her,
The
right?
blood dripping on the floor.
The blood dripping and all that. Yeah.
and maybe like the fate of the brother too, But again,
Yeah, I
that's sort of like
guess.
blink and you miss it, right?
Right, right. Like that happened like with 2 seconds,
Yeah,
without it being really focused on. But it was really effective.
yeah.
Hmm.
I agree. He didn't see it. It was there. It was there for us. It was visual language of the film, and that's great. Because if you think about it, a film is essentially a dialogue between the creators and the audience, right? And the language that they use is what makes it work or not work. They could have easily just used just the voice. They could have had Finney go, "Oh, there's a ghost," and have him deal with that and thus respond to that. But we don't have to do that. We have to put ourselves in Finney's shoes, but also knowing kind of like what's there on the other side of the phone, on the other side of the veil of the whatever.
Mhm.
And it worked most effectively for me because each of the kids had their own personalities. Each one of them, they also weren't kind of working in tandem, although they kind of were once everything came together. Each one of them had very different, like, okay, you need to escape. Yeah, you need to kick this dude's ass. Here's how you do it. They all had different ways. And I love that the film didn't really land on, well, this one was wrong and this one was right. Instead, I love the puzzle pieces of it, how it all kind of came together into one
Mhm.
escape plan where he had to kind of borrow from all of them. I'm a sucker for stuff like that. I think back to like I think it's like the fourth Nightmare on Elm Street movie, where the girl kind of like, that's the Dream Warrior.
Dream Warriors was 3.
Dream Warriors was 3. Dream Child was 5. Gosh, I forget what 4 is. But anyway, in 4, that's the one where she kind of picks up a couple of the powers from each of her friends who died. And when she uses them in the final fight there, I'm a sucker for shit like that because I love a good like callback, like an emotional callback, right? Like, that the characters that died in the first act, there's still an impact on the story later in the film.
Well, Jim, you had made a comment to me just after we saw the movie. And actually, let me go to Sean's comment real quick because it kind of set it up. Sean says, I looked at the various forms of contact as residual energy of those who died tragically there. Absolutely right, Sean. That's how I saw it too. And each one of the kids that had died and left some kind of psychic imprint or whatever had something to offer Finney. And so, sort of like the Planeteers all summon a captive planet by combining their powers, all of the things that the dead kids had told Finney to do played a role in how Finney eventually escaped.
Yep.
To your comment to me, Jim, and maybe you can talk more about this, you said that it was giving you like Home Alone vibes a little bit, but in a scary way. Can you talk about that a bit? Because that's an interesting comparison to make.
Right. And this movie gets a lot of credit from me because I mentioned you can pick out certain things about this movie that maybe remind you of other movies. And I mentioned, or other shows, I mentioned Stranger Things, I mentioned It. I actually got Home Alone vibes in the kind of the final showdown between Finney and the grabber, right, in the basement, right? When all of the stuff that Finney was doing, like digging a hole in the floor and covering it with a carpet and putting a grate in there, and filling the phone with dirt, right, to make it kind of a weapon. It felt to me a little bit like kind of like Kevin, you know what I mean, in Home Alone, like setting traps for the thieves, right, coming into the house. And that's where I kind of got the Home Alone vibes. But I will give the movie like supreme credit for two things that it did that a lot of horror movies don't have any interest in doing or don't have the guts to do. One is, once he took out the grabber, I wonder how many people thought that the grabber, like as Finney kind of ran by him, like how many people expected the grabber to like suddenly come back to life and just grab him and pull him back into the basement? Right?
Me, I totally thought
And
that
the
was
movie
going to
did
happen.
not do that,
The
and
movie
I
did
give the
not.
movie immense credit for just because it takes advantage of that tension that we think it's going to happen, but then it doesn't happen, right? The guy's dead, obviously, right? The guy was taken out by Finney. We didn't need any of the cheap, like, oh, we're gonna do it all again, and have him try to escape again. And then the other thing the movie did that a lot of movies did is the police in this movie were pretty darn good cop. They weren't like total idiots, like, screwing up. They were asking the right questions. They were talking in the right way, investigating. And when they learned something, they acted on it. And it was pretty straightforward stuff from the police in this movie. And I thought that was great too. They didn't have to kind of turn them into, bumbling idiots or unbelieving assholes, right? They were kind of on board from the get-go.
The only thing I found questionable was that they were believing a little girl was having dreams about the dead kids and her brother. I don't know. I mean,
following up on leads, at least they weren't saying, she's a crazy little kid, we're just stuck. You know what I mean? Like,
but that seems more realistic to me. I don't know.
I don't know. I guess they must have had I forget. I'll have to see this movie again because I'm definitely going to. But there must have been something about what the girl said, right, that ended up becoming reality, and that gave her credibility with them.
Well, they said at the beginning, because she had called out the black balloons at each crime scene.
Right.
And they were like, oh, that's a detail we haven't released yet. But that doesn't, if I'm a police officer, I wouldn't be like, oh, she's psychic and knows what she's doing. I'd just be like, how the fuck did you know that? But,
I think the setting does some heavy lifting here. But specifically the time frame, right? Because I know that there were stories from kind of like that era of like police actually working with psychics or like working with mediums or things like that. Not to say it worked. That was like in every department, everywhere, anything like that. It was widespread, but I know it happened a little bit. And for better or for worse, whatever. I feel like if this exact same story were told in a modern landscape, I feel like that would ring more untrue for me for some reason. But I feel like because of the setting and kind of because of what they were doing for this, like this wasn't a story about the cops heroically saving the day. This was a story about the girl. That side of the story is just the girl being able to use her powers to sort of like help give some rest to the boys by helping to find their body. I was able to kind of like let go of it. But again, if this were a modern story, it would have been a lot harder pill to swallow, I think.
Yeah. And I think, remember now, so she's telling them she's having dreams of these black balloons and stuff. But the cop, we know as a viewer that they're dreams because we're seeing these dreams, right? But from the cop's perspective, she's telling them they're dreams. But what if I'm an investigator? I'm like, she knows something. She says they're dreams, but maybe she knows somebody, who maybe somebody in her family, you know what I mean? It's possible that she has another connection, and that's what they were following up on. Even though they were saying dreams, maybe they didn't believe they were dreams, but she obviously knew something. She had some kind of inside information. And so I think they were to me anyway, seemed like they were kind of playing along with that to get more of that information.
And I think that sometimes from a writing perspective, you make elements of the story that are less important convenient so that you can focus on the meat that you want to focus on, right? Like, I think you could have probably had some more scenes of maybe like her getting hauled in and maybe being questioned a little bit more. Maybe the father kind of facing some more time, but that would have just added some runtime in like areas that are less interesting than what's happening with Finney. So I think in this case that when they're sitting down kind of like storyboarding everything, they probably said, what we need to do is we need to kind of get her from point A to point B and spend the rest of our time with the Finney and Ethan Hawke character story. So yeah, we have to probably make a few logical leaps over here to make that happen. But we're okay with that because the net positive, the pacing of it is okay. And, you know, the audience will probably be able to, even if they kind of squint their eyes a little bit, come along with us on that journey. If that makes that's my thought process.
Brad, you had pointed out something in the movie that was kind of a thrill for us, was seeing one of these characters played by an actor in an old series that we were watching. Will, I don't know if you were the fan of Lost.
Mm-hmm. Are you talking about Jeremy Davies? Are you talking
about Jeremy Davies,
Daniel Faraday?
So right? it's funny. We have been rewatching Lost. And we're in the final season, and Faraday is one of my favorite characters. And so, anyway, we're watching this movie, and the dad shows up, and like all three of us, because our roommate has been watching with us as well, laughed out loud at the same time, and nobody knew why we were laughing, but we were just like, "Oh my God, it's Daniel Faraday!" But Jim, you discovered a second Lost tie with this movie.
That's right. I don't know how many would have caught this one though. So at one point, the kids are sitting. This is after one of the beatings that the poor girl took from her dad. That was another very uncomfortable part of the movie. Like the girl is taking a beating from the belt from her drunken father. Just kind of horrible child abuse, basically. And that was horrific. But they start watching TV, and they're watching a TV show from that time called Emergency. And on Emergency is an actor called Kevin Tighe, who is also plays John Locke's dad in Lost.
Oh,
and they showed him on screen for a quick moment.
Yeah, his face was there for a second. So
yeah,
that was another. And I kept looking for a third one. I'm like, there's got to be a third one in here somewhere.
Well, I love that they had very specifically the references that they did. I don't necessarily know that
Davy and Goliath.
I don't think they were there to be kind of like wink, wink, nudge, nudgy too much. You know, that they were just sort of like, they were good flavor. We had Emergency, we had Davy and Goliath, and we had they're watching The Tingler one night. Like that's the horror movie, you know. And I think that was cool. Like, you know, it was enough for me to go like, ooh, but also not so much to be distracted. Like you mentioned, Brad, like it felt like nostalgic because it was of the time, but not because they were like, oh, we're going to sprinkle in these member berries and going to get them. That's not their focus here.
Right. I was thinking about, what was that movie called? Apollo 10.5.
Yeah.
Was that the name of it?
Yeah, the Linklater movie.
I was thinking about that movie, which was set, that was the 60s, right? But it was just like an endless string of member berries trying to tell this story. And they were great. It was nostalgic. It was fun. But it was very much like, let's just give everybody a pearl necklace of these member berries, you know. Whereas this was more like, these are just part of the background scenery. It's not the main focus, you know, it's just an incidental piece, which I think works way, way better for me, you know. So I was happy to see it play out that way.
I was a big fan of Davy and Goliath.
May I say also, I'm very much appreciating, like we're dropping a lot as an Austinite. We're talking about a film written by an Austinite, that the Robert Cargo. He lives here in Austin. And you mentioned Apollo 10.5. That's Richard Linklater, also Austin. So maybe that's what we need. Selfishly, maybe we need to do like a top films by Austin creators and top films by like Arizona creators as a future. Like, there's nothing coming out this weekend, so let's fill the time with the list episodes.
We've got Brokeback Mountain.
if we weren't going to skip next week because of scheduling issues, and really we don't want to review Minions, that could be a thing we do. But maybe we'll stick that idea in our pocket because, Will, I think that's a good one, and we could definitely get some good meat and potatoes out of that for sure. Well, fellas, any final thoughts on the Black Phone before we move into the last of our Pride Month plugs?
I just hope more people get to see it. I don't know what its streaming release is. Maybe I'm hoping it gets a little more legs in movies. Certainly it's set up good because, you know, the audience for Minions is not the audience for the Black Phone. So there won't be any stealing of audience there. But yeah, I definitely want to revisit this one again. I have a feeling there's a lot of little stuff in there that we could catch on a second viewing. But this one had me pretty much mesmerized from beginning to end.
Yeah, and to that point, Jim, I think there've been this kind of quick turnaround to get to streaming for a lot of these movies, sort of at that 45-day window. I think, is it Peacock that Blumhouse has the deal with? This one's either going to show up on Peacock or Amazon within the next 45 days, or both, you know, outside of like, you know, the whole like Apple TV, blah, 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 blah. I think that it's absolutely like, if you're the type of person who's still avoiding theaters, you don't have the time, financial means, whatever, to go see a movie right now, when that hits streaming, you should absolutely go watch that. But movies run off of box office numbers. Yes, the release helps. Yes, the kind of like the cult status can help too, but those first weekend and then second weekend numbers, they matter. And so this is the type of movie that I think is worth your time, is worth your energy, is worth your money if you feel so inclined. If you want to see, you know, we hear a lot about people who will say, you know, I'm getting so tired of remakes and sequels and superhero movies. But then when stuff like this comes out, they don't go see it because they're seeing Lightyear.
Because it's not a superhero movie.
You know, the other options in theaters. Let's look right now. We've got Jurassic World, Lightyear, and Top Gun. 3 movies that are either franchises, right? You know, nothing, you know, not talking about the quality of those films, you know, but people will make that statement. Where's the original stories? Here's an original story. This right here is that thing that you've been looking for. Money where your mouth is. If you feel so inclined, go see this movie. It's worth it. It's a good one that deserves, you know, all of the attention that it's getting and the attention that it could be getting.
Brad, we have one more comment. Did you want to cover it before?
I do. I didn't want to interrupt, but we're going to end our review with this question from Sean, who says, did you guys get an oh shit moment out of the brother getting taken out? I kind of figured that was coming. I was like, there's no way that Ethan Hawke is not like immediately coming down those stairs and gonna do something. An axe to the head wasn't necessarily what I expected. I thought maybe he'd like choke him out or something. But I would say it was an oh shit moment. Sure.
Yes. Yeah, maybe not completely unexpected the way it was set up, you know, with the brother kind of peeking in through the door and then opening the door, and kind of you see the realization come on his face. But then the camera switches to Finney's face, who's seeing what's coming behind the brother, and he gets to see that you know, the fatal blow, which I thought was like super effective. You know, especially because this movie wasn't really a slasher type movie, but to throw that moment in there, I think it kind of had more impact because it wasn't dulled by 50 other scenes of slashing right before it, right?
Yeah, I think what it does is we have a lot of implied violence throughout the course of this film, you know, and what I mean by that is we hear the other kids telling Finney the story of like what the Naughty Boy game what happens, you know, we hear the one boy say like, yeah, and then he took his knife to me, and you don't hear exactly what happens, but you know that it's like, okay, this dude butchers kids, like this is awful. But it's all implied violence at this point. And so seeing that we're about to have a final showdown between Finney and the Ethan Hawke character, the Grabber, and we're about to see kind of like all those things come to play. But that killing of the brother in such a violent, quick, efficient, just like I think it sort of boosts the tension going into it, because we know in that moment this is a dude that does not fuck around, and as soon as he gets his hands on Finney, it's over.
Right.
So the stakes for the next 2 minutes are going to be intense.
Plus, the movie dangles hope in front of you for like 2 seconds and then immediately snatches it out from you, back to despair. So that was a good way to do that. And there was implied violence. Well, there was violence throughout this movie. You had kid on kid violence, like that kid getting the shit beat out of him, like in the school ground. You had the dad like wailing on his, beating his daughter. There's just a lot peppered throughout. It's just not typical horror movie violence.
It's not the villain violence. Yeah, it's not
right.
Grabber.
Yeah.
Well, all in all, a very good flick. We all certainly appreciated The Black Phone very, very much. If you're looking for something that isn't fucking Minions to go see this weekend, maybe give your dollars to The Black Phone. Take a chance, see what you think, and let us know your thoughts on the film. If you weren't with us on the episode this week, we'd love to hear what you thought. Feel free to drop us a tweet at MB Podcast, or send us a message or comment on the thread about this film on our Facebook page. Just search for Movie Bears Podcast. Jim and Will, we're going to go ahead and switch gears from our movie review. We'll wrap that up to our Pride plugs. For the month of June 2022, we have been celebrating Pride all month. And as the month is winding down, we're trying to eke every moment of Pride out we can, even though we celebrate Pride all year. It gets a special month. So this is the part of the show where we put some things on your radar that we love, things that make us feel prideful in a good way, that maybe you haven't seen before, you haven't checked out. It could be a book, it could be a TV show, movie, video game, whatever, just something that we want to put on your Pride radar. And let's go to Jim first. Jim, what's your final Pride plug of 2022?
Sure. I think I've plugged this. This is a TV series, a fairly new one. I think I might have plugged it before, but not for Pride. So I'm going to bring it up again because I think it deserves a second mention. It's a TV series called Somebody Somewhere. This is basically Pride in the Heartland, right? This is kind of the heartland of America. This series is created by Hannah Boss and Paul Thurene, and it stars Bridget Everett kind of in the main role, and she's pretty awesome. She can act, she can sing. We saw her in Patty Cakes. We've seen her in several other TV shows and films. But here she kind of gets a chance to really shine and show her range. This is kind of a dramedy, I guess you could say. It's got some hugely comedic elements, but also some not super heavy, but certainly dramatic elements. I really love this. This is on HBO, by the way. So if you got HBO Max, check this out. Somebody Somewhere. There's only one season so far. But it did get awarded a second season, which I'm really, really excited for. I don't know when it starts, but you can bet I'll be on it. And again, it's called Somebody Somewhere. Check this one out. It's got a lot of LGBT themes kind of running through it, or characters. They don't really dive into LGBT themes too heavily, which I think what makes it kind of a perfect Pride property, because it's got a great cross section of characters, many of the memorable ones are LGBT. So check it out, Somebody Somewhere.
All right, excellent, Jim. Thank you so much. Will, how about you?
So I'm gonna look back 50 years in the past, but for
Woo!
a good reason for this Pride plug. And I think I've mentioned it briefly on this show before. There is a LGBTQ film by Rainier Fassbinder called "The Bitter Tears of Petra von Kant," and it's basically it's a really great movie. It's one of my favorite just films of the time, or maybe ever. I don't know. It's I like it a lot. And basically, it's this like successful fashion designer. She's caustic. She's arrogant. She's very much like her own biggest fan. She has this like secretary that she sort of mistreats, but you can tell that there's maybe some sort of relationship between the two of them in some way, maybe. Anyway, she runs across this like 23-year-old like woman who wants to become a model, and Petra becomes infatuated with her. It's a really, really cool movie because it's originally set as a Fassbinder wrote it as a play first, that turned into a film. So it's completely done in one set. It never leaves that one set. It does change like acts a couple of times, so it's basically like three different stories set in the same room, just sort of kind of resetting the story and kind of moving it forward a little bit. Really, really good, especially with finding a character that is initially unlikable and becomes both more likable and more pitiable the more that you spend time with her. I bring it up not just because I like it, and you can stream it on like HBO and Apple and Amazon and all that, and you should. The Bitter Tears of Petra von Kant is really good, but I want to put it on your radar because it's getting a remake that is right now hitting the queer festival circuit, which means its release is going to be coming out fairly soon. This one gender swaps everything, so instead of it being a woman in love with a younger woman, it's a man in love with a younger man. And again, by younger man, I'm talking like early 20s. I'm not talking like anything untoward here. This one's going to be called Peter von Kant. And it actually just played at Frameline, which is, San Francisco, I think, queer festival. And so it's one that I would say keep an eye out for. I'm definitely curious. I always worry about these like remakes of films that I like. Are they going to capture it or they're not? But it sounds like they're leaning into the queer on this one. They're not. They could have easily done a remake where they just cast like, a guy and a younger girl and just like taking the story and taking out the queer elements. They did not do that. They're leaning into it. So I'm on board. So the plug is for The Bitter Tears of Petra von Kant from 1972, but the thing to look forward to is Peter von Kant, the new film by Francois Ozon, which we should be seeing hopefully pretty soon. Keep an eye out for both.
All right, awesome. Well,
awesome.
Thanks so much. Well, Will, I'm gonna invert your old leading to new and talk about new leading to old for me. We've started watching the new Queer as Folk remake on Peacock. We're only about 3 episodes in. I'd say it's fairly good so far. Still kind of getting to know the characters. Incredibly diverse cast. A whole lot going on. If you haven't checked it out yet, I would say it's definitely worth a watch. Definitely not really that kid friendly. Just FYI, I know it's on Peacock, but just because it's coming from NBC doesn't mean there isn't dick. There's definitely dick. Your kids might ask questions, but watching the new Queer as Folk made me a little nostalgic for the old Queer as Folk. And we were going to a Pride celebration last weekend. And ahead of it, I did something I do every year before Pride, and that is watch the Pride episode of Queer as Folk's second season. It's the 4th episode. The old Queer as Folk show is 20 years old now. It's available on Showtime, Apple, everywhere you can buy things. But you don't have to watch the whole first season and the first few episodes of season 2 to enjoy that episode. It actually serves as kind of a really good springboard into the series. But it's a phenomenal piece of television, and it's something that I hold near and dear to my heart. It deals with a lot, everything from like the AIDS crisis to like leaning on your friends when you feel like you're nothing, and that everybody would be better off without you. It deals with, coming out and being around people who don't know who you really are, and, being brave enough to come out to them. But also, like, if you're not brave enough to come out, that's okay too. Like, you come out on your timetable, not mine. And so it finds a really inventive way within the confines of the show to get around this problem of like going to Pride and knowing coworkers are going to be there. How do you, get around them seeing you and knowing your secret? Anyway, one of the other reasons I really love this episode is it uses one of my favorite songs from ABBA. At the end of the episode, everybody dances in the street to the song Chiquitita. And we were at a Pride celebration. We stopped into a coffee shop to grab a quick coffee. And sure enough, as we're sitting there, Chiquitita fucking comes on the radio. And I just had the most like surreal moment, like hearing that song at Pride. Like, it was really cool. Anyway, so fantastic episode. Check it out. I know that the old Queer as Folk series is dated at this point. If you watch the whole thing, you'd be like, oh my God, some of this stuff would never fly, or maybe it's a little too stereotypical. I think it's a great series overall. It was very critically acclaimed at the time. But as a snapshot in sort of gay, queer history and media, I think that episode's a good one. So check it out.
Awesome one. Yeah. I heard you. That has also kicked off another rewatch of Queer as Folk for you, right?
Yeah.
The whole series.
I just started.
I went to bed last night early because I was wiped out. And then I heard the thump, 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 thump. I'm like, okay, Brad's down into Queer as Folk again.
Well, I just watched that one episode, and normally I don't like spark a rewatch of the series or anything, but like last night at like 9:00, I was just like, I really want to watch more of that, so why not? But anyway, I know Pride Month is coming to a close, only a few more days left of Pride officially, but again, I think Pride is something that we celebrate all year in all the things that we do. So, whatever form Pride takes for you, maybe it's a movie, maybe it's a book, maybe it's a TV series, whatever that is, I think it's awesome that we get to kind of share some of these things that we love and enjoy with you folks, our audience. We'd also love to hear about your Pride plugs. So if there's movies, TV shows, songs, video games, whatever that really bring out the pride in you, let us know what those things are. Maybe we'll even publish a list on our website or something, put it out on our Facebook and Twitter. Would definitely be great to hear your plugs as well.
I'd love to see pictures of you at Pride events. I'd love to see pictures of you at protest events, because those are also important right now as we kind of transition out of Pride Month proper and more into like, how do we protect our rights going forward? Right. There's a lot of activity and a lot of activism and a lot that we can do going forward. So I want to see those things, because this last week is, I don't know, I don't have to like go into the details of it because we all have access to the news in general, but this last week has absolutely sucked shit. And the thing that has most inspired me is seeing so many people who are saying, you know what, I'm not going to take this lying down, and have found ways of engaging positively but assertively, that their bodies have autonomy, that their love is valid, and that the people around them deserve respect. I've seen other people doing those fights has helped spark that in me. So I want to see that from you.
Absolutely. For sure. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. In case you want to chat with us between now and our next recording, which, by the way, relative to today, June 28th, 2022, we are taking next week off. Jim and I are going to be at Bigger Vegas, and we'll be traveling back, so we're not going to be able to do the show on our normal night. Will, thank you for your flexibility in punting to the week after. But if folks want to chat, let's tell them how they can get in touch. Jim, where can folks find you online?
Find me on my Twitter, my main Twitter, where I talk mostly about movies. I try to keep it to movies. Although, like I said, this past week has been tough to keep it to that. But yeah, my Twitter account is at JJP Out West. At JJP Out West. And you can find me also on Facebook all the time under my name, Jim Pugliafico.
All right. Excellent. Will, how about yourself?
Yeah, I'm on all the different social media platforms to differing degree of success and engagement. I'm over on Twitter and on Instagram. I'm at Whatever Cove. It's what's right beneath my beard right now if you're watching live. I'm on Facebook. I'm William Lindis. Send me a message first. There's two of us there. You probably don't want to talk to my father. You probably want to talk to me. You want to also find me on Letterboxd, which is where I rank and review films. Again, search for William Lindis there. And I'm over on TikTok. I'm at the Movie Bear. Send me a follow, send me a hi, send me a message, any of those different platforms. I'd love to connect with you.
All right, excellent. And you can find me on Facebook. Just look for Brad Harris. I'm the one with Chub Chaser Bear Friends, probably in common with you, as well as on my Safe for Work Twitter, which is at Brad Pro. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, Jim and myself are also going to be at Bigger Vegas, which is kicking off even now as we speak. We're getting there tomorrow. But 3,000 members of our community are going to be at that event. It's huge. If you want to chat movies, find us. We'll probably be in hospitality quite a bit. Would love to talk to you about some of your favorite films. Maybe you can flood our movie list with things that we need to see, as if we need more things. I know, Jim, but I always love hearing what people's favorite movies are, and then finding things that I can dig into and check out. So come find us at Bigger Vegas. Let us know what those things are.
We're down to be flooded.
Let's flood our guts with your favorite movies.
Oh my God.
Jesus. What? I mean, I get it, but also,
All right, everybody. Well, have a wonderful week, a wonderful 2 weeks, and we will see you on our next episode. Take care, everybody. We'll see you later. Bye.
Bye. We just went explicit.
We earned that E. It's what we do.
Yeah.
Bye.
You know,
everybody.
when I hit that radio button at the end that says explicit or clean, I know where I'm going this week.
It's a seedy episode. What can I say? Bye, everybody.